What if the restlessness you feel is not confusion but remembrance? What if the quiet dissatisfaction that follows you into success, relationships, and even prayer is not failure but awakening? What if the reason ordinary paths have never satisfied you is because you were never designed for an ordinary life? Pause for a moment. Breathe. Listen carefully. This is not coincidence. This is divine interruption. You did not arrive at this moment by accident, and you are not hearing these words because an algorithm selected you. Heaven pressed pause on everything around you to speak directly to you. You have asked yourself questions in the dark that you never dared to say out loud. Why do you feel different even when you try to blend in? Why does your spirit resist settling, even when comfort is within reach? Why do you sense a weight of responsibility you never applied for? These questions are not signs of instability. They are signals. They are evidence that something ancient and intentional is stirring inside you. You are not lost, you are being summoned. Chosen one. Consider this if your life were meant to follow the same patterns as everyone else. Why has it required such unusual pressure? Why were you forced to mature early? Why did betrayal introduce itself before celebration? Why did you learn endurance before ease? These are not punishments. They are preparations. Gold is not forged in conversation. It is forged in fire. And you have survived heat that would have destroyed others not because you are lucky, but because you are sealed. Ask yourself another question. One that pierces deeper. What if the delays you resented were actually protections you misunderstood? What if God withheld certain doors not to deny you prosperity, but to keep you from inheriting it too early and losing yourself in the process? You were never being ignored. You were being trained. There is a difference between being forgotten and being hidden. Seeds grow in darkness before they break the surface. You have felt it, the invisible line between you and the crowd. Even when you laugh with others, something in you stays watchful. Even when you succeed, something in you remains hungry. That hunger is not greed. It is destiny calling itself to your attention. You carry an awareness that cannot be turned off. Once you see beyond survival, you cannot return to sleep. And this awakening comes with responsibility. Do not do it, no matter the price. Do not trade your calling for comfort. Do not exchange long-term glory for short-term relief. There are moments when mercy whispers and moments when it withdraws to let consequence teach. This is not fear speaking, it is clarity. Conviction is a gift. The fact that you feel the weight of decision means the door is still open. Heaven is still negotiating with your obedience. You have wondered why certain people drifted away when you started growing. You thought it was your fault. It wasn't. Growth creates distance when others are committed to stagnation. Light does not argue with darkness. It exposes it. And exposure makes the comfortable uncomfortable. You were never rejected, you were revealed. Some could not stay because you're becoming threatened, they're remaining the same. This is where prosperity begins, not with money, but with alignment. Prosperity is not first what enters your hands, it is what God entrusts to your spirit. Before overflow shows up in accounts, it must be sealed in identity. Because unhealed identity leaks blessing. You are being stabilized before you are being elevated. Strengthened before you are entrusted. Rooted before you are expanded. The ancient words still echo because they are alive, and they speak directly into moments like this. As the prophet wrote in the scroll of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 3, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak, and not lie though it tarry. Wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry." This is not poetic comfort. This is a legal declaration. Appointed means scheduled. Scheduled means inevitable. Your prosperity has timing, not uncertainty. Let that settle. The vision you carry is not late, it is aligned. The silence you endured was not absence, it was incubation. And the reason you could not quit despite exhaustion, disappointment, and moments of doubt is because the seal was already placed. You were held by a promise stronger than your emotions. Even when you questioned yourself, heaven never questioned you. Now hear this clearly: once a seal is placed by God, no opinion can unseal it. No delay can dissolve it. No enemy can reverse it. You may have felt behind, but you were never out of order. You were being positioned where acceleration would not destroy you. Sudden increase without structure ruins people. That is why your foundation was built slowly, painfully, intentionally. This is your awakening question, perhaps the most important of all. Are you willing to stop shrinking to make others comfortable now that heaven is calling you to stand? Because sealed prosperity requires visibility. Light must be seen. Authority must be recognized. And legacy cannot be built in hiding forever. There comes a moment when preparation ends and permission begins. This is that moment. If this message is resonating, do not scroll past it lightly. Like this message, share it with someone who is waking up, and subscribe to stay aligned with what is coming next. And as a prophetic act of agreement, comment the number 77 below, not for me, but as a declaration that you recognize the season shifting and you choose to step into what has already been sealed. Your awareness has been activated. Your prosperity has been authorized, and this is only the beginning. You have wondered why God did not choose the shortest route for you. Why the promise seemed clear, yet the path felt unnecessarily long. Why deliverance came, but ease did not follow. And this question is not new. It echoes through sacred history, written into the journey of a people who, like you, were chosen, delivered, and yet deliberately delayed. The children of Israel were freed from Egypt by undeniable power. Chains shattered overnight. Generations of oppression ended in a single command. The sea itself would later obey. Yet what happened next confounds the logical mind. God did not lead them straight into the land He promised. He did not choose efficiency. He chose formation. The story reveals something crucial about the nature of divine guidance. Freedom does not automatically mean readiness. Leaving Egypt was quick. Removing Egypt from them would take time. Slavery had shaped their instincts, their fears, their expectations, and though their bodies were free, their thinking was still bound. If they had faced immediate warfare, they would have retreated, not because the promise was false, but because their identity was still fragile. You must understand this. Chosen one, because your life mirrors this pattern. God is not interested in merely getting you out of what oppressed you. He is committed to preparing you for what you asked for. And preparation often looks like delay to the untrained eye. The wilderness was not punishment. It was protection. Every extra mile served a purpose. Every detour was intentional. God knew that the quickest route would expose them to battles they were not yet equipped to win. Not because He doubted His power, but because He honors process. He will not rush you into environments that require strength you have not yet developed. This is why your journey has felt longer than others. You watched people take shortcuts while you were led through valleys. You saw others arrive while you were still circling. And if you are honest, there were moments you questioned whether God had changed His mind. But divine silence does not mean divine reversal. Sometimes it means divine recalibration. In the wilderness, Israel learned dependence. No farms, no stored grain. No familiar systems, only daily provision. Manna taught them trust. Water from the rock taught them obedience. Fire by night and cloud by day taught them how to follow without full explanation. They were being trained to listen, not rush, to obey, not negotiate, to move when God moved, not when fear pushed. This season stripped illusions from them. Status dissolved. Egypt had structure, hierarchy, and familiarity even if it was cruel. The wilderness removed false security that is uncomfortable. You have felt that discomfort. When God removes what you leaned on, it feels like loss, but it is actually clarity. Anything you depend on more than Him must eventually be removed, or it will sabotage your future prosperity. Notice this: God did not eliminate obstacles in the wilderness. He revealed Himself within them. He allowed hunger so provision could be experienced. He allowed uncertainty so guidance could be learned. Prosperity without guidance produces arrogance. Guidance before prosperity produces stewardship. That is why the order matters. There were moments Israel wanted to go back. They romanticized slavery because discomfort makes the past look safer than it was. When pressure increases, memory becomes selective. You too have been tempted to return to old patterns not because they were good, but because they were familiar. But familiarity is not destiny. Comfort is not calling. God's route avoided premature confrontation. The people were not ready to see themselves as warriors yet. They still thought like survivors. And survivors avoid conflict at all costs. But inheritors understand that opposition is part of possession. Before you can conquer territory, you must believe you belong there. This truth was declared plainly in the sacred record. The voice of God thundered in the book of Exodus, chapter 13, verse 17. God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, "Lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt." This is not about distance. It is about readiness. Near does not mean safe. Fast does not mean wise. You are not on a longer path because you are behind. You are on a wiser path because you are chosen. God knows what confrontation would do to you if it came too early. He knows what success would expose if character had not been fortified. He knows what authority would amplify if healing were incomplete. In the wilderness, Israel learned who God was and who they were not. Idols were exposed, complaints surfaced, fear spoke loudly. But so did faith. Leaders were shaped, laws were given, identity was formed. By the time they approached the land again, they were no longer just freed slaves. They were a people with structure, rhythm, and awareness of the presence that traveled with them. This is the part many misunderstand. The wilderness did not delay the promise, it preserved it. Had they entered too early, they would have lost what they were meant to possess. God's timing is not about inconvenience, it is about survival and sustainability. Your delays have done the same. They have protected you from alliances that would have drained you, from responsibilities that would have crushed you, from visibility that would have exposed wounds still healing. You were not being withheld from prosperity. Prosperity was being withheld from immaturity. Now, when you look back, you may begin to see it. The closed doors, the slowed progress, the unexpected reroutes. Each one saved you from becoming something you would later regret. Each one shaped discernment, patience, and spiritual muscle. You are learning how to follow presence, not pressure. The wilderness does not last forever, but it lasts long enough to make sure you never confuse provision with the provider. When you finally step into what was promised, You will not panic under pressure or collapse under responsibility. You will remember the fire, the cloud, and the voice that guided you when nothing else made sense. And that is why your path was not the shortest one. It was the safest one for the future you are about to inherit. There comes a point in every chosen life when preparation gives way to revelation. Not revelation about God, but revelation about yourself. This is the moment when you realize that the delays did not just shape your patience. They exposed your power. You are no longer asking, "Why am I here?" You are starting to ask, "Why was I trusted with this?" And that shift is subtle, but it changes everything. You are beginning to see patterns. The same types of challenges, the same spiritual pressure right before breakthroughs, the same resistance whenever you step closer to alignment. This is not random. Resistance follows value. Opposition does not waste energy on what carries no threat. The intensity you've faced is proportionate to the authority you carry. Darkness does not panic over people with no assignment. Up until now, much of your strength was unconscious. You survived because you had to, not because you knew who you were, but survival is not your ceiling. Awareness is rising, and awareness brings responsibility. Once you know you are called, you cannot live casually anymore. Once you recognize the weight on your life, neutrality disappears. This is where many hesitate, not because they lack faith, but because they fear the cost of obedience. You have felt that internal tension, the pull between comfort and conviction, between staying familiar and stepping forward, between remaining liked and becoming effective. This tension is not confusion. It is the final negotiation between who you were and who you are becoming. And make no mistake, something must die for something greater to live. This is the moment when God stops doing everything for you and begins doing things through you. And that transition feels dangerous because it requires trust, not just in Him, but in what He has placed inside you. You are being asked to act without constant reassurance, to move without visible safety nets, to believe that the voice you've been trained to recognize is enough. Many people fail here not because they disobey loudly, but because they delay quietly. They wait for conditions to be perfect. They wait for confidence to arrive. They wait for permission from people who were never assigned to validate them. Delay becomes a disguise for fear, but hesitation, prolonged too long, becomes disobedience. This is where the inner battle intensifies. Old mindsets try to reassert control. You remember past mistakes. You rehearse former limitations. You question whether you're truly qualified. But listen closely. Qualification was never the requirement. Availability was. God has always chosen willingness over resume. He fills what He calls. He does not call what is already full. You are not stepping into prosperity as a reward. You are stepping into it as a responsibility. Prosperity amplifies who you already are. That is why the internal work mattered more than speed. That is why obedience was tested in private before authority is expressed in public. You were being entrusted, not entertained. And now comes a truth that anchors this entire season. The ancient words recorded in Romans still echo today, speaking directly into moments of hesitation and decision. Scripture declares in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 30, "Moreover, whom He predestined, these He also called. Whom He called, these He also justified. And whom He justified, these He also glorified." And notice the order. Predestined, called, justified, glorified. No step missing, no step accidental. Glory is not a possibility, it is the conclusion of obedience. You were not called to almost fulfill your purpose. You were not justified to retreat at the threshold. The process is complete in intention, even if it is unfolding in time, which means the authority you are waiting for has already been authorized. What remains is agreement. This is why the pressure is increased internally. Externally, things may still look quiet, but inside, urgency is rising. You feel it when you try to distract yourself and can't. You feel it when old comforts no longer satisfy. You feel it when compromise leaves a bitter aftertaste. This is not condemnation. This is calibration. Heaven is tuning you for the next frequency. And now, there is something you must do, not for performance, not for others, but as an act of internal alignment. Words matter. Agreement matters. Declaration matters. When spoken consciously, words become anchors for decision. So here is the invitation, simple but weighty. Comment this phrase, "I step forward." Say it, because stepping forward does not mean you see the entire path. It means you trust the direction. It means you are no longer negotiating with fear. It means you accept that comfort is no longer your highest value. Obedience is. This phrase is not about bravery, it is about surrendering hesitation. When you write it, you are not informing others, you are reminding yourself. You are marking a moment of awareness, a line between delay and decision, between preparation and participation, between waiting for clarity and moving with conviction. You are not being rushed, but you are being summoned, and summons come with timing, not panic, but precision. This is not the season to look back and measure how far you've come. It is the season to look ahead and accept how much has been entrusted to you. You are ready not because you feel fearless, but because you are willing. And willingness in the hands of God becomes unstoppable authority. There is a quiet danger that appears not when you are rejected, but when you are no longer dependent on approval. When you finally stop needing validation, a new responsibility emerges guarding your heart. Because freedom from approval can either mature into wisdom or harden into pride. And the difference is not external behavior, it is internal posture. You are entering a phase where opinions no longer control you. Compliments don't inflate you the way they once did. Criticism doesn't crush you the way it used to. Silence doesn't scare you. Distance doesn't destabilize you. This is growth. But growth without guidance can become isolation. Independence without humility can become arrogance. That is why this stage requires intentional practice. Here is the first truth you must anchor. Not needing their approval does not mean you stop caring about your heart. It means you become responsible for it. When people no longer define you, it is tempting to emotionally disengage altogether, to close off, to say, "I don't need anyone." But that is not strength, that is armor. And armor worn too long becomes a prison. God did not free you from validation so you could become unreachable. He freed you so you could become unshakable and open. So the practice begins here, separate approval from connection. You no longer chase affirmation, but you still honor relationship. You stop performing, but you don't stop loving. You release the need to be understood by everyone, but you do not allow bitterness to narrate your story. Guarding your heart means monitoring what emotions you allow to camp there. Resentment is subtle. It disguises itself as wisdom. It says, "I've learned my lesson," when really it's saying, "I will never be vulnerable again." Discernment does not require emotional numbness. It requires clarity without contempt. As you rise, people will project onto you. Some will assume you think you're better. Others will feel exposed by your growth. A few will try to reinsert themselves not because they honor your evolution, but because they miss the version of you that needed them. This is where guarding your heart becomes practical. You do not owe everyone access to your inner world. Access is earned through consistency, humility, and alignment, not history. But guarding your heart does not mean guarding it with suspicion. It means guarding it with boundaries rooted in peace, not fear. Here is another practice. Watch your internal dialogue when recognition increases. When you no longer need their approval, a quiet voice may whisper, "See, you were right all along." That voice is dangerous. It turns healing into superiority, correction into comparison, growth into judgment. The goal was never to be above people, it was to be free among them. Remember this: you were elevated to serve with clarity, not to stand apart with contempt. Prosperity of spirit is not proven by how many people you outgrow, but by how gently you treat those still finding their way. Guarding your heart also means staying teachable. When approval no longer drives you, it is easy to stop listening. But wisdom listens even when it disagrees. Pride interrupts, wisdom pauses. If God could use a donkey to correct a prophet, He can use unexpected voices to refine you. Do not confuse confidence with infallibility. Now listen carefully, this is critical. The moment you stop needing human approval is often when temptation shifts. It no longer comes as insecurity, it comes as entitlement. After everything I've endured, I deserve this. Be careful. Reward thinking can slowly erode obedience. Grace did not elevate you so you could excuse yourself from discipline. It elevated you so you could carry influence without corruption. This is why Scripture speaks so directly to the condition of the heart. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms. Chapter 51, verse 10. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Notice David did not ask for success, vindication, or favor. He asked for a clean heart, because he understood that everything else flows from that. So here are practical ways to guard your heart in this season. First, practice silent humility, not self-deprecation humility. Let your work speak. Let your fruit testify. You don't need to announce your growth. Those who are meant to see it will recognize it without explanation. Second, audit your reactions. When someone misunderstands you, do you feel the need to correct them immediately? Or can you rest in truth without defending it? Defensiveness is often a sign that approval is still secretly desired. Peace doesn't rush to be understood. Third, choose gratitude intentionally. Gratitude keeps your heart soft when success increases. It reminds you that elevation is a gift, not a trophy. Thankfulness neutralizes entitlement before it takes root. Fourth, stay anchored in private disciplines. Public confidence must be balanced by private surrender. Prayer, reflection, and silence are not optional now, they are protective. Visibility without intimacy with God will always distort your heart. Fifth, bless without attachment. You are going to help people who will never thank you, credit you, or stay loyal. That is not failure, that is maturity. Blessing without strings is one of the clearest signs that approval no longer governs you. As you practice these things, you will notice something powerful. Your heart stays soft even as your boundaries stay strong. You become steady, not reactive, present, not performative, secure, not distant. This is emotional authority. This is spiritual adulthood. And if this message is helping you navigate this season with clarity, I invite you gently and sincerely to like and share it so others who are growing through similar transitions can find it. And if you want to stay connected as these teachings continue, subscribe not out of obligation but alignment. You are not here to prove anything anymore. You are here to steward what has been entrusted to you. So guard your heart not because it is fragile, but because it is valuable. There is a shift that happens when prosperity stops being a hope and starts becoming a responsibility. This is the moment many never talk about. People pray for increase, but few prepare for the weight that comes with it. Because abundance does not only change what you have, it reveals who you are. And now, you are standing at the edge of that revelation. You are beginning to notice it already. Your tolerance for disorder is lower. Your discernment is sharper. You sense when something is misaligned faster than before. This is not judgment, it is stewardship awakening. God does not pour overflow into careless hands. He entrusts it to those who can carry blessing without being owned by it. Prosperity is not indulgence, it is assignment. You were never meant to receive increase so you could escape responsibility. You were meant to receive it so you could shoulder more of it. That is why this season is asking something specific of you. Intentional stewardship of your inner world before the outer overflow fully manifests. Here is the truth: many miss prosperity tests loyalty more than lack ever did. In lack, you cling to God out of necessity. In abundance, you must choose Him out of reverence. That choice is quieter, subtler, and more revealing. This is why God watches what you do when pressure lifts, who you become when survival is no longer the motivator. You may have noticed new options appearing, new access, new invitations. Some are from God, some are distractions disguised as rewards. Not every open door is a divine door. Some doors open to test whether you will ask God before walking through them or assume permission because you finally can. This is where discipline becomes sacred. Discipline is not restriction, it is direction. It tells prosperity where it is allowed to flow and where it is not. Without discipline, abundance becomes a flood that erodes character. With discipline, it becomes a river that brings life wherever it goes. You are being taught to manage overflow without losing reverence, to enjoy blessing without worshiping it, to possess resources without letting them possess you. This balance is not learned in theory, it is practiced daily, through small, consistent choices. Pay attention to how you spend your attention, not just your money. Time is the first currency God watches. Where your attention goes, your devotion follows. Prosperity that distracts you from your source is not blessing, it is bait. But prosperity that amplifies your obedience becomes legacy. There will be moments you feel justified to relax spiritually. You've endured so much. You've proven your faithfulness. But this is not the time to coast. It is the time to consecrate. Elevation requires maintenance. Altars must be rebuilt at every new level, or familiarity will erode honor. This is also the season where generosity becomes strategic. Not impulsive, not performative. Strategic generosity listens before it gives. It discerns timing, recipients, and purpose. God is teaching you how to move resources with wisdom, not emotion, because your prosperity is meant to heal systems, not feed egos. And hear this clearly: stewardship is not perfection. You will make decisions that need adjustment. You will learn as you go. God is not looking for flawlessness. He is looking for humility. A heart that remains correctable is more valuable than a plan that looks impressive. The ancient wisdom speaks directly into this responsibility. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 11, verse 24, there is one who scatters yet increases more, and there is one who withholds more than is right, but it leads to poverty. This is not just about money, it is about posture. Open hands multiply, clenched hands shrink. Prosperity flows where trust remains alive. You are being trained to release without fear and to retain without greed, to save without hoarding, to give without needing applause. This balance marks those who are safe to trust with influence. Now, as this awareness settles, there is a moment of agreement required, not rushed, not emotional, intentional. Numbers in Scripture often symbolize order, witness, and completion. And this number represents alignment with stewardship and responsibility. As a prophetic sign of agreement with this season of wise stewardship, comment the number 144 below. This number is not magic, it is symbolic. It represents structure, order, and readiness to be entrusted. By commenting it, you are not asking for more, you are acknowledging responsibility for what is already on the way. You are saying, I am prepared to manage what God releases without losing my center. Let this be a quiet marker, a line in the sand between wishing and stewarding, between hoping and handling, between praying for overflow and becoming someone who can sustain it. You are not stepping into prosperity blindly. You are stepping into it anchored, aware, and accountable, and that is why it will last. There is a final resistance that rarely announces itself loudly. It does not come as temptation the way it used to. It does not arrive with chaos or obvious sin. It comes quietly, disguised as logic, caution, even wisdom. This resistance lives inside the mind, not the environment. And it appears only when obedience is no longer difficult but costly. You have already proven you can obey when you are desperate. You have already proven you can trust when you have nothing to lose. This stage is different. Now you are being asked to obey when disobedience would still look reasonable, when compromise would still look successful, when delay would still feel safe. This is the final test of obedience. At this level, nothing external is forcing your hand. You are not cornered. You are not threatened. You are not broken. You are capable. And that is exactly why the test is weightier. Because now, obedience is no longer survival, it is surrender. You feel it in the subtle hesitation, the internal pause before decisive action. The thought that says later would be wiser. The voice that whispers, you've come so far, why risk it now? This is not fear in its raw form. This is fear refined by experience, and it is more dangerous than panic because it sounds intelligent. But this is where you must remember obedience is not measured by intention. It is measured by movement. You already know what you are supposed to do. That is the uncomfortable truth. God is not being vague with you anymore. The instructions are not confusing. What makes this hard is not lack of clarity. It is the awareness of consequence. Because now, obedience will change your posture permanently. You will not be able to return to the same level of anonymity, comfort, or control. This is why many stall here. Not because they don't love God, but because they still want options. Options feel like safety. Obedience feels like finality. You are being asked to cross a threshold where retreat will no longer be available, where half commitment will no longer function, where your life will begin to speak louder than your words ever did. This is the moment where heaven watches not what you believe, but what you choose. And understand this delayed obedience at this stage does not look like rebellion. It looks like postponement. But postponement, when clarity has already been given, slowly hardens into resistance. Not because God withdraws, but because sensitivity dulls. This is why the internal tension feels sharper now. You are not being tormented, you are being summoned. The pressure you feel is not condemnation. It is invitation with an expiration. Not because God is impatient, but because timing matters. There are windows that do not stay open indefinitely, not out of cruelty, but out of order. You are standing at one of those windows. What makes this final test so revealing is that no one else may see it. There is no audience, no applause, no immediate feedback, only alignment or misalignment forming quietly inside you. This is where character is sealed. You may be tempted to think, "I've already done enough." And compared to others, maybe you have. But obedience is not comparative, it is personal. God does not measure you against people. He measures you against instruction. This is also the stage where identity tries to renegotiate. You have grown accustomed to being the one who overcomes, survives, and endures. But now you are being asked to become the one who initiates. That requires a different courage. Endurance withstands pressure. Obedience creates movement. And movement invites exposure. You will no longer be able to hide behind preparation. No longer able to say, "I'm still learning." No longer able to delay behind process. This is not because preparation failed, but because it succeeded. Training ends when deployment begins. There is a sobering clarity here. You are not being asked if you are capable. You are being asked if you are willing to trust God after capability has been developed. To rely on Him not because you are weak, but because you are strong enough to choose dependence anyway. This is the obedience that costs pride, the obedience that releases control, the obedience that refuses to negotiate terms. And Scripture does not soften this truth. It speaks plainly, even severely, because this moment carries eternal weight. As was spoken in the sacred texts of old, the ancient words recorded in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 26 declare, "For if we deliberately keep on sinning after we have received the knowledge of the truth, no sacrifice for sins is left." This is not written to frighten, but to awaken. Knowledge changes responsibility. Awareness removes neutrality. This does not mean perfection is demanded. It means willful resistance becomes dangerous once truth is known. God is patient, but He is not passive. He will not force obedience, but He will not endlessly negotiate with delay either. You are not being threatened. You are being trusted. This final test is about agreement, alignment, yielding the last area where you still wanted veto power. It may not even look dramatic. It may be a decision no one applauds, a step no one understands, a sacrifice that feels unnecessary to the natural mind. But heaven recognizes it immediately, because once this obedience is given, something shifts permanently, not just externally but internally. Authority settles, peace deepens, the striving stops. You no longer feel the need to justify your path. You are no longer distracted by alternate versions of your life. Focus sharpens because obedience simplifies vision. This is why those who pass this stage carry a different weight. Their words land differently. Their presence steadies rooms. Their peace cannot be shaken easily. Not because they are perfect, but because they are aligned. You are closer than you realize. The resistance you feel is not a sign to stop, it is a sign you are at the threshold. The final test always comes before release, not to disqualify, but to confirm. And once this is crossed, prosperity no longer feels like something you chase. It becomes something that follows, because alignment always attracts provision. You are not being asked to be fearless. You are being asked to be obedient anyway. And that obedience will mark you. There is a moment when becoming stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like truth. You are no longer reaching for identity, you are resting inside it. The striving that once defined your days has quieted. Not because challenges disappeared, but because your position has changed. You are no longer asking heaven for permission. You are walking in authorization. This is what it means to be crowned without apology. You have crossed something irreversible. not a finish line, but a threshold. You no longer need to explain why your life looks different, why your values are sharper, why your pace is slower but surer. Explanation belongs to insecurity. Authority moves without announcement, and you have learned that silence, when aligned, is not weakness, it is weight. There was a time when you needed reassurance at every step, a time when affirmation from others felt like oxygen, a time when doubt could knock you off course for days. That version of you is not gone, but it is no longer in charge. Wisdom is, discernment is when a settled spirit now leads where anxiety once shouted. You are not crowned because you achieved more than others. You are crowned because you endured transformation without abandoning obedience. You allowed God to change not just your circumstances, but your instincts, your reactions, your desires. You let Him reorder your inner world before He expanded your outer one. That is why this crown fits. Prosperity now moves differently around you. It is no longer a desperate prayer or a distant hope. It is a response. Alignment attracts provision the way gravity attracts matter. You are no longer chasing doors, they recognize you. You are no longer fighting for position, your presence establishes it. And yes, there are still battles ahead. Crowns do not remove conflict, they redefine it. But you no longer fight for survival. You fight from authority. You do not scramble for peace. You carry it. Storms may rise, but they do not own the atmosphere around you. This is the maturity few speak about. The calm after obedience, the clarity after surrender. The steadiness that comes when your inner world and your assignment finally agree. You are not perfect, but you are positioned. And position changes everything. You will notice something else now. People respond to you differently. Some with honor, some with distance, some with curiosity. This is not your concern. Your responsibility is no longer to be relatable to everyone. It is to be faithful to what you carry. When God crowns someone, it is not for decoration. It is for function. You are crowned to build, crowned to protect, the crown to establish what outlives you. Legacy has entered the conversation. Legacy does not rush. It does not panic. It does not perform. It plants trees whose shade it may never personally enjoy. And this is where your prosperity finds its highest purpose, not in accumulation, but in continuation. What you steward now will echo forward. There will be moments when you are tempted to apologize for your confidence. Do not. Confidence rooted in obedience does not need to shrink to be palatable. Humility is not pretending you are small. It is remembering the source of your strength while standing fully in it. There will also be moments when loneliness tries to revisit you, whispering that the cost was too high. But remember, this isolation was never the goal. Alignment was. And alignment always attracts the right connections at the right altitude. You will not lack companionship. You will lack tolerance for misalignment. That is not loss. That is discernment. The ancient declaration confirms this season plainly. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 28, verse 18. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. And here is the revelation: authority is delegated. When you move in alignment with Christ, you are not borrowing confidence. You are operating under assignment. Heaven backs what it authorizes. That is why your steps feel steadier now. That is why your decisions carry less fear. You are not guessing anymore. You are governing. This does not mean you stop learning. It means learning no longer destabilizes you. Correction no longer threatens you. Growth no longer scares you. You are rooted. And rooted people can be stretched without breaking. Now, as this journey continues beyond these words, understand this: you are not walking it alone. There is a community of others waking up to similar truths, navigating similar transitions, shedding similar old skins. If this message has spoken to you, I invite you genuinely to like and share it so it can reach those who are standing at the same threshold you once stood at. And if you want to remain connected as these teachings unfold, consider subscribing not as a transaction, but as alignment. Stay close to what sharpens you. Stay near what reminds you who you are when the world gets loud. You do not need to announce your crown. Your life will testify. You are not becoming. You have become. Before you move on, don't rush to label this moment or trap it in conclusions. Let it remain open, unfinished in the best way. Some endings are not meant to close a chapter, but to leave a door slightly ajar, allowing reflection to continue long after the words stop. You don't need to do anything immediately. You don't need to prove you understood. You don't need to respond to anyone else's expectations. What matters is what lingers quietly inside you after the noise fades. Sometimes truth doesn't announce itself loudly. Sometimes it settles slowly, like light adjusting your eyes after darkness. You may find yourself thinking differently tomorrow, reacting more calmly, pausing before speaking, choosing rest instead of rush, choosing alignment instead of approval. These are not dramatic changes, but they are real. And real change is rarely loud at the beginning. If this message stays with you, let it sit with it. Let it surface again in moments when you're tempted to shrink, to explain yourself, or to abandon what you know is right. You don't need to replay everything you heard. One line, one insight, one feeling is enough to guide you forward. And if at some point you feel moved to like this message, or to share it with someone who might be standing where you once stood, you can do that freely, without pressure. Not because you were told to, but because something resonated. Because sometimes sharing is simply saying, you're not alone in this. This is not a conclusion. It's a pause, a breath, a space where understanding can grow on its own. Whatever you choose next, silence, action, reflection, let it come from clarity, not urgency. From truth, not impulse. You don't need to chase what is meant for you. What is aligned has a way of finding you. So take this with you, loosely held but deeply rooted, and move forward at your own pace. The path remains open,